Welcome back to Pokemon Colosseum, and if you've come here for story progress, you've come to the wrong place. I'm going to be doing all 4 rounds of Pyrite Colosseum. I wanted to do them all in this one video, just because, well, I mean, if you don't want to see optional grindy stuff, you're not going to watch this anyway, and I felt I might as well get this all out of the way in a single video. So, let's go ahead and get started. So, as I said before, Pyrite Colosseum is first available after you beat Mirror B, and in fact, you'll see the trainers here actually acknowledge that. So, yeah, they seem to imply you're meant to do this right after beating Mirror B, but the problem is that if you do it right then, you're going to get completely destroyed. Even though the Pokemon here are quite weak for the most part, yeah, they're in the low 50s, which is about the point that Gonzap, the second last boss in the main game, essentially, yeah, has. So, it's pretty difficult to win at that early point in the game. In fact, I actually do have some failed channel footage, I don't know if I'll show that or not, but of my first attempt at doing this. I forgot just how high level these people were. Well, at least Sol outspared Linoon. That's kind of impressive. Anyway, let's just... I just want to get that Linoon out of the way quickly, because the Teddiursa is much worse of a threat than this thing. Wonder if I can actually prevent Sol from fainting here. A lot of people have realized... I may have been wrong! Yeah, if that had hit Sol, that probably would have finished Sol off. A lot of people have said that Sol has fainted in a lot of battles that he's been in recently, which I guess is kind of makes sense because his defenses are just so low, but still, yeah, I hope that he does a bit better. I feel really bad for this Teddiursa, though. But yeah, it did pull out Thrash, which was a little unexpected. That would have been even worse if Thrash was its 120 power self from later generations. And you only had 2 Pokemon for some reason. Yeah, nothing like your, bear getting psychicked into oblivion to clear your mind. I don't know. I was going to mention something about the way that I'm sure I've said this before, but I've always disliked how psychic moves were depicted in the anime. I didn't like how they made it so that you control the target's body and slam them into walls. It's just never how I pictured them being in the games. I always pictured them more like how they look in this game. Just a big blast of energy. Anyway, though, more normal types. Yeah, if I had Kickface in my lead, he'd be doing very well here. Yeah, I guess the problem with these Colosseum challenges, well, not so much problem, but just one thing that you have to remember is that you always lead with the same Pokemon in all 4 fights, so if you've got something that would do better against these Pokemon, like, for example, Kickface, you will have to switch out. But speaking of doing better, we have Delcatty here, which is obviously not doing better. In fact, I think this person is arguably even weaker than the first trainer in this round. Let's see what the Delcatty actually does. Frustration! Yeah! I forget if Skitty and Delcatty learn that by level up naturally. They might. I know that Baneri does. But it's really sad that Delcatty is such a bad Pokemon that it's intentionally using a move that requires low happiness. Yeah, I know that I make fun of Delcatty a lot. It's just that, Delcatty is just one of those Pokemon that anyway, that I really can't find much good to say about it at all. Other than the fact that it can paralyze ground type with Thunder Wave. That's really the only thing it has going for it. Anyway, that battle ended very quickly. And deflating animation again. Would have been kind of funny if that was in Smash Bros in some way. It was always kind of funny to me how Jigglypuff was always not always, but Jigglypuff was sometimes a very powerful character in Smash Brothers. What is it with trainers in this game and talking about getting serious? I know a lot of them do that. But anyway, it was just always kind of ironic how Jigglypuff was always quite powerful and Mewtwo was usually pretty weak. Though I know I've probably mentioned this earlier in this playthrough, but I always liked using Mewtwo in Melee. Mewtwo was probably the only character in Melee that I actually liked from like a character standpoint, so he was my main in that game by default. Betcher. Well, at least it's not Belcher or anything like that. Doduo and Loudred. So, yeah, the theme here is basically normal types, though at least Doduo is part flying, so it's not completely demolished by fighting types, like everything else in this round is. Ironically, I'm not actually using the fighting type for this. Yeah, I actually completely forgotten, I think now I'm making a face, but I'd completely forgotten about the, yes, because Dan Green is already leads on level 45, and I want to split the experience around a little bit. But I'd actually forgotten the exact teams of the trainers in these, so I didn't really prepare my leads in advance for these rounds. There's sometimes a theme to each round of a particular stadium, but I don't always remember them. Well, you actually have more than 2 Pokemon, so that's an improvement. That wasn't Stomp, that was more like a Slap. Yeah, Pokemon using the same generic animation for any physical attack, or any special attack in some cases, sometimes looks a bit weird. Don't know if this is one of those games where Marowak using Boomerang looks really dumb, like when Marowak just stands in place, holding its own bone, because the bone is, well, I guess Soul Fainted then. Holding its own bone because its bone is part of its actual 3D model, and a second bone just appears in midair and flies away without Marowak doing anything. Thankfully, I think Marowak actually does throw its bone when using Boomerang in Battle Revolution, so that's cool. Battle Revolution did fix some of the 3D models, especially Pidgeot, who looks marginally less stupid in that game. We won't be seeing any Pidgeots used by trainers in this game, but in XD we probably will be seeing Pidgeots, and yeah, I'll rant a lot about how terrible Pidgeot's 3D model looks in Colosseum and XD. But anyway, yeah, you can tell there the difference between Sol and Luna's defenses. Sol was taking, like, what, half of its HP from Stomp, and Luna takes barely even a 10th. See, Umbreon is pretty useful in this game. Not that I need to keep hammering that in, but... Anyway... I'm gonna need to think of things to talk about for these battles. Because after this is done, I'm gonna need to do some other stadium battles too. Because then there'll be the Under Colosseum, which is a lot tougher than this, so there'll probably be a lot more interesting things to talk about within the matches themselves. Yeah, these battles were really tough by the standards of earlier in the game, but here not so much. Yeah, that would have been true if I'd fought this guy at the earliest possible time. Also, we finally know what this music comes from, but it's still only the intro and not the actual main part of the song. In fact, this part of the song never repeats when you're actually fighting the Cypher admins, but it's the only part that repeats here. And we actually have a non-normal type here. We have a Combusken, which is actually pretty good because Sol will wreck that thing. Also have Vigoroth, which I believe, as of currently, that thing's like banned from the lowest tier, despite being an unevolved Pokemon. Kind of interesting whenever an unevolved Pokemon gets into one of those borderline categories like that. Of course, back in Gen 3, there was only one borderline category. I guess maybe because the NU metagame wasn't really fully developed at the time. People just didn't really care about NU all that much. But yeah, people often misunderstand what those are. They're not exactly tiers, per se. They're basically ban lists for other tiers. It's like, Borderline is to UU what Uber is to OU. It's Pokemon that aren't used enough to get into OU, but are considered broken for UU. Like, I think back in Gen 3, Blaziken was Borderline. Sol actually has 80 attack, in terms of the raw stat, which is higher than Kickface's raw attack stat, but of course, yeah, it's doubled. Yeah, pity to those people who don't fully understand what pure power does. It just says raises attack, and probably should say doubles attack. And many people don't realize it doubles the raw attack stat, but I think I've talked about this before. Now, if I was smart here... Oh, well, this thing's probably going to go down, provided that High Jump Kick doesn't miss. I was going to say if I was smart here, I'd switch Sol out, because well, I don't even need to worry about whether or not High Jump Kick misses, because that was a crit anyway. Now, Swellow is a Pokemon that I actually think is a little bit underrated. A lot of people dismiss it as another bad early game bird Pokemon, and I know that in comparison to Staraptor, which is ridiculous by early game bird standards, and to a lesser extent Talonflame, because while Talonflame in Gen 6 at least was amazing with Gale Wings, in-game, without access to Gale Wings, I don't think it's quite as good. But anyway, we get a cash prize, and we get TM01, which is Focus Punch. I remember that off by heart, because it's kind of easy to remember what the number 1 TM is in many games. But yeah, that's Focus Punch. And it still says makes the user flinch, but like I pointed out, it's actually not flinching. It's a specific state specific to Focus Punch. So anyway, I'm really not sure who I should be shuffling into the front slot of my team. But anyway, as I was saying, I know that Swellow would look bad compared to Staraptor and, again, Talonflame, but I think that by early game bird standards, Swellow is actually decent, especially with Guts. And the introduction of things like Toxic Orb and Flame Orb. But even during the main story, I don't find Swellow that bad. I mean, it is really, really fast, and it's not that weak offensively. I mean, it doesn't really have much to deal with, well, you know, said no fan of Colosseum ever, but I guess that makes sense considering how long in the past it was that we beat that guy. Oh, your theme seems to be grass types. Really weak grass types, too. I kind of feel like this is an even easier battle than round 1's first battle. But anyway. So yeah, I personally consider Swellow to be a bit underrated, but regardless of that, this is a pretty good matchup. I just cite him Oddish and Ice Beam Shroomish. Oh, that's it! I just remembered. Shiinotic! That's the name of the Gen 7 fully evolved mushroom Pokemon. I don't think I've actually trained up one of those yet. And it's weird because it's just one that, I mean, it's got a few good things to it, but haven't really found a particularly decent use for it yet. Yeah, I kind of had a feeling you'd survive. And there's growth. Obviously not Gen 5's much, much better growth. But, well, Shroomish may not be part fighting type yet, but it'll still go down to this side beam. I do really want Psychic, but we will get that eventually. I could have got that much earlier from Mount Battle, and in a lot of ways I probably should have gone with that over Ice Beam, because Suicune would have learned Aurora Beam eventually, and I wonder if that would have knocked out Dakin's Flygon anyway. I do recommend getting Ice Beam before the final battles, but for now I feel like Aurora Beam might have been okay. I mean, I'm doing alright with Psybeam, and I really think that Soul would be a lot more useful at this point in the game with Psychic. Because Psychic is completely insane. And like I said much earlier, theoretically, if you grinded up the Poke Coupons to get Psychic at the first possible opportunity that you can, that would be pretty amazing. Now, we actually have a form or a minion of Mirror Bees. Are we going to get any dialogue here that isn't referencing Mirror Bee in some way? I mean, he did pretty much used to own this town, so that kind of makes sense. Oh, hey, something else weak to Ice Beam. Great. There's also a Spinda here. Yeah, Spinda. I think I remember in one of Maryland streams, he actually got a Spinda that had spots perfectly covering its eyes. Yeah, Spinda is another one of those intentional joke Pokemon. The main value of it is that its spot pattern is always randomized. I forget if the 3D models are always the same, or if they actually do keep the randomized spot pattern. Because there's apparently about 4 billion Spindas or something like that. I'm getting actually kind of lucky with freezes lately. Also, a lot of people here seem to like using Thrash. Really? Really? Soul, you fainted to a Spinda. Wow. People give Umbreon flack for being called useless all the time. Don't worry, Soul will definitely get better once it gets Psychic, but yeah, at the moment, so that is kind of an issue, is that Espeon is very defensively frail, and sometimes you need a bit of staying power. Like, for example, Entei hits pretty hard in this game, but also has a lot of staying power to it because of its great HP. Suicune has great defenses, but also can attack decently well. I mean, it's not really fair to be comparing Espeon to legendaries, but, I mean, I'm not really in the business of memorizing base stat totals of Pokemon, except for the ones that have very obvious all-round even base stat totals, like ones that have 600. But I think the Eevee's base stat total is almost 600? I'm not sure. I know that all of them have the exact same base stat total, and they just rearrange the stats. In fact, they've got the exact same stats, they just give them different things. I remember back when they first announced Sylveon that I was always wondering what its stat spread would actually be, because they'd already done many others, but turns out that slow, especially bulky with decent HP was one they hadn't done yet. And again, I guess I should address the element of the living room that a lot of people want a Dragon-type EV evolution, because that'd mean that that every type that was special before the physical special split, what the heck am I doing using Gust? Oh, I just wanted to humiliate this Spinda by finishing off with that. That was probably why. But anyway, yeah, then every special type that was special in Gen 3 would have an EV associated with it. Why did I do that? I think I must have misclicked there. I know that Giga Train would have been quadruple not very effective, but I do get my PP fully healed after every fight, so... I mean, it's not like it's going to make much of a difference. This Roselia is still going to go down in 2 hits anyway. I forget how good Roselia's attack... Really? Wonder if that would have carried anyway even without the crit, because it is a few levels higher, it is the same type of attack bonus, and... I was about to say jump off is kind of frail, but it actually sort of isn't. I know that Roserade sometimes uses Sword Dance physical sets, but it really needs Sword Dance to make those work, so I think its attack stat is not that amazing. So I forget exactly what Roselia's is. And speaking of Roselia, there goes Roselia. It's funny, some people have told me that they find Gardenia's Roserade to be one of the strongest Pokemon in any early game gym leader. I've never really had problems with it, because, I mean, Staravia pretty much destroys it. And if you have a Zubat by then, I mean, you've got a quadruple resistance to it. And there are also a lot of, not so much decent bug types, but, you know, bug types that you can get in the forest nearby that also would quadruple resist it. So I feel like it's not that particularly hard to beat. But anyway. Nice contrast there. You would be right at home in that bar from Tangled. Anyway, Cacnea and Gloom. It's kind of very similar to that first fight. There seems to be a lot of grass types in this round. And once again, we get to hear this music. Anything to hear this music more. But yeah, we'll be hearing this a lot more later, because in Mount Battle, every fight past Area 6, I believe, is entirely done with this music. Which is why a lot of people consider it the theme for the higher floors of Mount Battle. So yeah, after this, I actually think that might be the area leaders next, because I think I did that before I did the Under Colosseum. The Under Colosseum is actually pretty difficult, so the levels there range up to about level 57, and they use fully evolved Pokemon, so I think I needed a little bit more grinding before I could safely use that as a method of more grinding. But is it just me or did this battle go by in the blink of an eye? Because it feels like it did. That's probably going to be kind of a theme here. Hence why I guess I'm keeping it all contained to just one video. Sadly, it means this music didn't even get to go on for a full loop. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but some people find the victory music here familiar. Yes, it was used completely identically in Battle Revolution as well. Shame there weren't any jingles like this in Battle Revolution. These are really cool. I do like these quite a lot. And we have a Rider. Well, you didn't mention Mirror B at least. So what do you got? More grass types? Yes, more grass types, but some better ones at least. Grovyle and Nuzleaf. Hey, it's 2 Pokemon with significant roles in Mystery Dungeon games. Probably shouldn't say more because spoilers. I do like the kind of roles they gave to a lot of Pokemon in the Mystery Dungeon series. The ways they use Pokemon in both roles that are kind of fitting for them, and roles that sometimes aren't what you'd expect that Pokemon to be like. Oh, okay. Is somebody going to set up Sunny Day for you, or are you just going to go for Solar Beam without Sun, which is usually a bad idea? I think that was a crit, so yeah. Guess we'll never know whether that Nuzleaf was going to use Sunny Day or not. Wouldn't have really mattered since Grovyle had already used up its charge turn. But as you can see there, that was a lot more experience, so we are going to be gradually leveling up a little bit more. Guess if I run out of things to talk about, I can just talk about, yeah, I guess, my thoughts on the nature of grinding in this game, and just philosophically contemplating the whole concept of grinding and to do this when it comes to late game grinding in this, and why personally I'm not bothered by it here as much as I am in Diamond and Pearl, where, yeah, I guess I'll save my thoughts on that until I really need to talk about that. But good job that I finish off the other Pokemon, thereby allowing Surf to get its full damage, so Lyron can get completely destroyed. Laron, I don't really know how to pronounce it. Sol's attacking stats are getting pretty high, though, and, well, by that I mean special attack and speed. I guess speed is kind of an attacking stat. Anyway, though, that is round 2 done. So what TM do we get this time? TM07. That is... Is that Toxic? Oh, it's Hail. Yeah, Toxic was one below. Hail. So it doesn't really seem like there's any theme to these TMs so far. And hey, now Sol is the one that's the highest leveled here, so I'll need to switch you out for someone else. I guess Luna can get a little bit of the attention, and, I mean, Dan Green already was in the lead earlier, but I mean, then again, he is Dan Green, so he kind of deserves to be in the lead all the time. I guess I've already talked about, well, I don't know, I always did kind of like the third Pokemon movie. I thought it was pretty decent. It was the only one out of the first 3 that actually got decent reviews as well. Because, I mean, it's pretty public knowledge just how badly 4Kids butchered the first movie. The second movie, I don't know, and of course they're back to talking about Mirror B, but the second movie, I have a soft spot for the second movie because I got a bit of nostalgia for it, but, like, thinking back on it, it probably wasn't the best as far as Pokemon movies go. And the third one was still pretty decent. I mean, I admit that I'm kind of biased because the second movie was pretty much the biggest poker shipping movie ever, although that coincides with it being part of the, because I didn't realize at the time that the second movie was actually part of the Orange Island series, and the Orange Islands really cranked up the Ash Misty shipping. It was a little bit less in Johto, so that's partly why the third movie, which was set in the Johto series, was, Dan Green, you better not get destroyed by this. Well, you totally didn't get destroyed because that was a crit and it only did that much damage. Sky Attack Hoot Hoot? Really? Well, that's interesting. Then again, Hoot Hoot's eyes glowing is... Wasn't there an anime episode about that? The main thing I know about Hoot Hoot's eyes is that they look terrifying in its heart gold sprite, probably unintentionally. They really misalign the pupils there, and it looks really disturbing. Nummel. Yeah, I was worried that my Sunny Day might have benefited something on his team. Of course I miss, and you go for the Sky Attack. I guess we can see what it looks like in this game. That's really underwhelming. Where's the bird-shaped beam of doom? It just looks like a generic explosion. I think in XD it looked a lot better. I remember how it looked in Battle Revolution, actually. I don't know why, but for some reason I do remember it specifically being like this golden orb with wings to the side of it. I think its Japanese name is Godbird or something, but... Anyway, now you're going down. I remember Moltres learning that by level up in Gen 1 or 2, I forget which one. Uh-oh, that's not good. Yeah, that plus Sun equals pain, although it won't be as strong the next time thanks to your sharply lowered special attack, and yeah, you don't have a white herb. Yeah, I bet it's weird hearing that pronounced as herb on YouTube and not herb. I think it was actually pretty late in my life that I found out that America's pronounced herb differently. And there goes Nummel, and it's pretty funny fading animation where it just slowly realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm badly hurt. Boom. Sorry if I'm going on a lot of weird tangents. Wait a minute, you have level 50 Pokemon, of course you'd be able to beat Mirror B. He only had low 30s. / late 20s, I think. No, wait, no, yeah, his Shadow was 35, so he had mid-30s. Kind of surprised, because it's been a long time since we were last here. So, what we got this time? Rhyhorn and Metatite. Again, these Pokemon aren't exactly the best, although Dan Green may have an issue with that Rhyhorn. Kind of wish that he got something like Earthquake or even Superpower or something. But yeah, Superpower, by the way, it actually did exist in Gen 3, but it wasn't a move tutor move, so it was much less widely distributed. Very few Pokemon actually... Wow, see, okay, you can probably tell why I don't use Fire Blast much in competitive. My luck with Fire Blast is abysmal. I have just as much luck with that as with... Okay, that would have been bad if that had hit. But as with people... As what people typically have with things like Stone Edge and Focus Blast. I've never really had much luck with Fire Blast. Which is weird because Mega Horn I usually don't have that much bad luck with. And Hydro Pump I'm usually fine with. It helps there are a lot of Pokemon, though, that have no better option than Hydro Pump. Like Salamence, for example. It doesn't learn Surf, but it gets Hydro Pump. Hydreigon does get Surf, though, so I usually prefer to use Surf on Hydreigon. So, yeah, getting Dan Green out of there, because I don't exactly want him to be taking rock hits. You're probably going to go for Dynamic Punch again, aren't you? Which, when I was a kid, I thought was Dynamite Punch. So it was mainly... I guess I can segue into a bit of a weird story here. My first exposure to the move, I knew it as E-Punch. So I thought that was short for Explosion Punch. Now, why did I first know of this move as E-Punch? Well, when I was really young, a friend of mine had Pokemon Gold before it officially came out in English. And he talked about various parts of it, and he keeps saying that the game was, to quote him directly, remember that we were very young kids back then, but to quote him, that the game was 50% Japanese, 50% English. And basically all of the battle text was in English, but pretty much all the story dialogue was still in Japanese, and all the moves had weird abbreviated names, like Fire Blast was F-Blast, for example. And the badges all had weird abbreviated names as well. So, why was this? It was only much later in life that I think back to that and realize he must have been playing a ROM with an incomplete fan translation. So back then, I didn't really have much of a concept of emulators or ROMs. Like, this was back when I was in, well, I mean, we call it primary school here, or infant school, but it's called grade school in the US. But anyway, I was really young back then. I was like maybe 7 or 8 or so. So I wouldn't have had a concept of what piracy was, what ROMs or emulators were, and I certainly had no idea what a fan translation was. I mean, I vaguely knew that Pokemon was Japanese, and I think I vaguely knew that the anime was English dubbed, but I didn't really have a concept of translation or things like that back then. So I wouldn't have known, but now that I think about it, it's obvious that what that was, an incomplete fan translation. Usually they translate menus and battle dialogue, the things you need to actually play the game, first before they translate the main story dialogue. And usually they have to abbreviate things if they don't have enough space. Like, for example, there's no way they would have been able to fit Fire Blast in the space they did, so they would have to call it F-Blast. And with Dynamic Punch, they had to just use E-Punch. I forget what its exact name is in Japanese, but I don't think it's Explosion Punch. I think it's something else, but I have no idea what that move even was. I wasn't paying attention. I was focusing on my story. But anyway, when I get around to doing a no experience run of Heart Gold, there's another story about my experience knowing about that game from just the hearsay that I heard about from that friend of mine. It involves Ilex Forest, but I'll talk about that when I get to Johto, because that's not really the place here, and I'll save that story for then. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. I wouldn't have known that back then that there were fan translations, but I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I probably shouldn't go into my stance on doing fan translations for a game that you know is going to be localized into English, because I'm personally against that, but I don't want to open that can of worms here. I know that happened for Pokemon Black and White as well, and I mean, to be honest, I think that may have been what prompted X and Y to get a simultaneous worldwide release, so I'm actually glad for that, but, anyway. Probably stop talking now, because like I said, don't want to open that can of worms here. Anyway, Rock types. Rock types seem to be the theme for this round. So, not exactly sure why I had... Well, Jump Fluff does well against them, but does badly when hit by rock moves itself. Guess I could probably talk about more about what Dynamic Punch actually is. It's a move that never really saw much use before No Guard. So there was no Guard in Gen 3. That was a new ability introduced in Gen 4. So Dynamic Punch was always just 50% accuracy. So nobody really used it seriously. Oh, there's a really annoying battle CD in XD that relies on... Everything has Dynamic Punch, and the battle pretty much relies on pure luck as to who hits the most. I know there are two versions of that. One of them is where the Pokemon pretty much only had Dynamic Punch. Well, I guess he was. And the other is where you have more moves than just Dynamic Punch. And that one has a bit more strategy, but the first one is almost pure luck. And it's not like the Metronome Battle CD, which is admittedly pure luck, but it's also hilarious and really fun. Yeah, Metronome Battle is always great to watch, especially if you see Bidoofs using Fly. Or really anything that shouldn't be using Fly. So, we're back at the final round of... Well, final battle of round 3. I know that I'm referring to the, like, each bout of 4 battles as a round, even though each individual battle is technically called a round in Universe, but I'm referring to this kind of like Stadium, where you have, like, round 1 and round 2, and in round 2 everyone has different teams. You guys certainly like to cover your grass weaknesses. Got confused Raiden a little too late there. And water. Ow! See, again, I'm not exactly concentrating so much on the battles here and more on the things that I'm saying, and I'm just wondering here, why didn't I use Giga Drain on that Quagsire immediately? Yeah, it's completely untouched. Why didn't I use Giga Drain on it? I'm pretty confused now. Yeah, that's not doing much. It's always a gamble using Confusion. I'm sending in so many things that are weak to Aerial Ace, so I'm not really sure why. But it is always a gamble using Confusion, because sometimes it might do absolutely nothing, and other times they'll hit themselves every time and put themselves out of action for like 3 turns, or even more if you're lucky. Sludge Bomb, that's interesting. And Kick Face goes down. Yeah, these battles are getting a little bit tougher. You can probably tell by the fact that this video is only a little over halfway done, and already I haven't even started round 4, and that's the last one left. So, yeah, I've gone through 3 out of 4 of the rounds, and there's still quite a lot of the video left, which implies the last round would take quite a while. And there was kind of more to be expected, a 50-50 thing of Confusion. I guess we're about to find out whether or not that Quagsire is Water Absorb. Let's see. Yes, it did. I probably should have just Ice Beam Gligar, but oh well. Gligar's another one of those Pokemon that I used to pronounce differently. I used to call it Gligar, but now that I know it's a pun on Glide, it's kind of like Bonsly. I used to say Bons. Is that 3 crits from the opponent this one battle? And crit and poison, wow. At least it wasn't a double crit, double kick, followed by a poison point activation. Probably already told that story, but the one time that I tried a Nuzlocke style challenge, I had a death due to that exact combination of things, and that convinced me to never try that again. I'm kind of cheating here using Healer Guidance in the Colosseum battle, but I guess I wanted Jump Up to get the experience. Makes sense that I do that, considering that the main reason why I'm doing these Colosseum battles is the experience. This is one of the few times where Stadium-style battles actually do give experience. I guess one of the few times you can actually use items in them too. Hell of her. Water Flying is that annoying type combination where if you don't have an electric type, you're kind of out of luck when it comes to hitting weaknesses. Oh, I mean, you can use Rock, but you're going to get destroyed by that. Is Suicune actually going to go down here? I should probably switch Suicune out here. I don't know why I'm keeping you in. Because if you faint, you're not going to get the experience. Well, that was... Well, I mean, I'm getting kind of lucky with freezes lately. You know what would be funny if this actually froze too? That looks funny. The beam looks really small when it's used by Pelipper. Oh, that would have been amazing if that had also froze. This has just been a battle of hacks, hasn't it? 1 crit on my... Well, actually, maybe even more crits on my side, I forget. And then 3 crits on their side, and 1 freeze. Okay, I guess Suicune actually survived that turn. And we've actually got a lot of... Just barely survived that turn. A lot of Pokemon... Switch out Suicune past me! What are you doing? Oh yeah, sure, pass me. Switch out the one that's not heavily weakened to poison. That's a smart idea. Yeah, sometimes I have no idea what my past self was doing. Because again, the main point of me doing this was the experience. And I won't get the experience if you faint. Wing attack. I'm going to take a guess that's aimed at... Yep, thought so. See, now the battles are getting a little bit more intense, I can actually more commentate on the battle itself, rather than just going on random tangents. So, Dan Green will have to get revenge for his, I guess, brother. Possibly, even though they're all technically genderless. Another frustration user. People must really not like their Pokemon in Pyrite Town. Where? Stop again. Why do I get this weird sense of deja vu that I fought a Pelipper with Espeon before? I think it was with Iron. Okay, that is almost certainly Yugon. Yep, there goes Shelgon. Shelgon's kind of an interesting Pokemon in that it's very defensively oriented and doesn't really have stats comparable to its final form at all. It's kind of interesting. I always had an idea for if I ever did a, and I probably won't because now that Pokemon's actually gone around taking down ROM hacks, but if I ever did a ROM hack myself, I had an idea for a Dragon Gym Leader who specialized more in defensive Dragon types, and he'd have a Shelgon that had Iron Defense and Wish. Like, Wish was an egg move, admittedly. Well, not an egg. No, that's completely wrong. Wish was an event move only for it. But that would be just kind of an interesting concept. And now I totally see him as having Komodo. Because before I didn't really have, like, a good Dragon-type signature Pokemon for him, this idea for a gym leader that I have, that wasn't used by any other significant Dragon-type trainer, as their ace Pokemon. I mean, Cynthia's not exactly a Dragon-type trainer, but her ace is pretty recognizably Garchomp, so having him with Garchomp would be kind of like, I don't know, it just wouldn't feel that unique. But now I think, hey, he could have Komodo. That'd make sense. Because I always... Anyway. That's TM05 Roar. Roar has a few interesting applications in double battles, like I've discussed before. It's, well, I guess I was about to say that it could be useful in Skarmory, and then I realized that Skarmory's past uploading spikes in this game, so really there's not much reason to use it on Skarmory. I guess I haven't led with Kickface and Jumpluff before. They're the two, I guess the two non-starter, non-legendaries here. So I guess they need to prove themselves for a bit. But yeah, that Dragon-type gym leader had a medieval knight-themed design. Then Wigstrom happened, which kind of stole my idea. Except, you know, Wigstrom wasn't actually a... It was funny, because when I heard, like, when it was mentioned earlier on, in X and Y, that there was going to be a Steel-type Elite Form... Well... Okay, wait, no, let me rephrase that. So, if you go to one of the restaurants in Lumio City, you hear in advance that there is... I don't know if Electric Type's going to be the theme of this round, but anyway, you hear in advance that there is a chef member of the Elite Four. And so, I always expected that... Like, I didn't really know what the types of the Elite Four would be at the time, but when I realized the Elite Four's types were Fire, Steel, Dragon, and Water, my first guess for the chef would have been either Fire or Steel. I never expected the chef to be the Water user. And I always expected that Seabolt would be the Steel user. So I was completely taken off guard by Wigstrom. Don't exactly know why I use this Klefki, but, oh well. I still wish Malphur had done more in that game, but... Yes, this isn't really the time to be discussing X and Y. Yeah, I could make a mean comment about kicking Pikachu in the face because I hate it so much, but I don't know. I know a lot of people like Pikachu, I don't want to be that unfair to it. Lonely Minun without Plusle. Just like our Lonely Plusle without a Minun. I've mentioned this before, and I will be saying this later, but there is unused text implying that there was going to be a Shadow Minun in this game. I always felt like it would have made sense if Silver had a Minun, and maybe if that Minun got kidnapped and actually turned into a Shadow Pokemon and you got it later. That would be kind of interesting, but sadly it was not to be, and thus our Plusle is restricted to not ever being able to use its ability. But yeah, that's Battle 1 done. Now at this point, the full heal between battles is probably going to be much more useful. Also, even using the term pulverized, I just suddenly got flashbacks to... I had an English teacher back in high school who used to really hate it whenever the term pulverized was used metaphorically, because she was just too obsessed with the fact that the literal meaning of that term is ground into powder. So there was something that talked about like someone pulverizing a door, and she was like, how do you reduce a door to powder? Anyway, that's a really random tangent. Voltorb and Wailmer, okay, you got one electric type, but one that's, well, not an electric type. I've got a decent team for handling you, though. Have we seen any Wailmers yet? I know we've seen Wailord, but have we seen Wailmer? Yeah, that Voltorb is so fast that it's actually faster than Jumpluff, which is pretty impressive for an unevolved Pokemon. And of course I get paralyzed. I mean, Spark has, I think, like a 30% chance of paralysis, and again, it's special in this gen, not physical. Also, Charge. Yeah, I'm sure I've commented on Charge in this game, but Charge doesn't even raise special... Although it's kind of weird. They buffed it so that it boosts special defense, starting with Gen 4, but it still just doesn't see much use. It's generally not really considered all that worth it. Okay, so that thing must have had higher than like 115 speed or something. Oh, look, it's Whirlpool. Yay. That HM move that, well, I mean, yeah, that was a crit. That should tell you how useful of a move Whirlpool is. Had Whirlpool existed in Gen 1, it would have basically been clamped, so it would have been pointless, but it still would have been pretty amazing. But sadly, it was not to be. I feel like, I don't know, like, I'm wondering what the most hated HM move of all is. I mean, Cut has always been pretty bad. Rock Smash, I think, is usually the most hated just for how weak it is, and the fact that a lot of games outright require Rock Smash, which forces you to waste a move slot on a really bad move. At least Strength is an okay substitute for Return until you have Max Happiness, and Surf is amazing. Waterfall, at least in Gen 3, was a nice, alternative to Surf for a single targeting water move in doubles, and in later gens it became physical, so it became a really good move. And yeah, Whirlpool was... I think was there only one compulsory use of Whirlpool in all of Gen 2? Yeah, you keep telling yourself that, Argyle. You are totally the new boss of Pyrite Town. Because I know you need to use Whirlpool in Dragon's Den, but... Oh, you still are using one electric type, so maybe there is kind of a theme here. Yeah, I guess being a really weak move, and it being a required HM, but only for a very few number of uses. I think it's only 1 or 2 times you ever have to use that move in the game. Yeah, it might be one of the most disliked HM moves. I know that Defog is... I mean, yeah, Defog was pretty annoying too. Though, technically speaking, Defog is optional, if you want to be banging your head against the wall with annoyance from all your moves missing. Courtyard Colosseum and Battle Revolution. That will sound unrelated to anyone who hasn't played that game, but that Colosseum had a random chance of fog, and it's a shame because it had nice music and a pretty cool-looking area, but no one would ever want to pick that Colosseum online because it has a random chance of fog, which turns the entire battle into a luck fest. Unless someone somehow happens to have defog, which nobody ever used competitively back then because it removed your own entry hazards and nothing else. Anyway, though, there was a point that I was getting at with Whirlpool, and that was mainly that... oh, no. Ow. Yeah, so it does half the... And there goes Jumpluff, probably. Yep. Oh, no! Just barely survived. Please don't freeze. Good. Yeah, it does half the damage it would have done if it hit if it misses, but anyway. It's a Battle CD and XD that tells you that, actually. But yeah, the anime, for some reason, always depicted Whirlpool as being incredibly powerful. I don't know what possessed them to do that, but they just... Then again, moves in the anime have never really worked where they're done in the games. Like, apparently Will-O-Wisp in the anime is always used as an attacking move that's roughly the equivalent of Flamethrower. Reversal. That's better when you have Endure. Is it better than anything that I have on my current moveset? It's... If I give up Confusion, I'm useless against fighting types. I don't think I'm going to end up using that. I was about to say it's better on Hariyama, but Hariyama's a bit too slow to pull that off effectively. I think Heracross makes the best use of Reversal in this generation. And yeah, it was already a pipe dream before you met me, and now it's even more of a pipe dream. The term pipe dream just instantly makes me think of Mario, though. Which I have been playing Odyssey lately, and surprisingly, considering that I really didn't like Breath of the Wild, I actually am really enjoying Odyssey. So, yet another female character who's hitting on Wes. That's quite a lot of them. Or at least the second one in Pyrite Town. And yeah, yet more electric types. Electrode and Lunatone. That's probably going to explode, isn't it? I can just tell that thing's going to try and explode. Lunatone being part Psychic isn't going to go so well for Kickface. Lunatone and Solrock are Pokemon that just... They're interesting in theory, especially Lunatone. I actually kind of like Lunatone's move pool, especially that, like, that it gets Hypnosis and Calm Mind. But its stats are just a little bit mediocre. Oh, you're going for Explosion, aren't you? Yes, you are! Wow, you were smart enough to use the Protect Explosion strategy. I know that a major boss fight next year uses that. Okay, can we survive this? Well, Jumpluff goes down. Will Kickface go down too? Yes! Well, that was a fairly high-level Electrode, so I guess it makes sense. So, everything except Lunatone is wiped off the field. Just kind of remembered something. Back in Gen 3's Battle Frontier and Emerald, there was a way that I often used to get through the early rounds of the Battle Dome easily. For some reason, if you went into Battle Dome doubles and you had a Pokemon with Explosion and blew up everything on the field, so normally in battle facilities, if there's a complete draw, as in everyone runs out of Pokemon, then at the same time, then the AI wins, which is really cheap and irritating, but that's how it works. In the Battle Dome, though, if there's a draw, that the battle goes into judging, and the weird thing is that in the early stages of the Battle Dome, where everyone else uses really low-leveled unevolved Pokemon, if you use Explosion and wipe out everything on the field, because everyone only gets to bring 2 Pokemon in Battle Dome doubles each, so use Explosion, wipe out everything, the judging is almost always in your favor. It's kind of weird how that works, but maybe it's because the opponent never got to attack, so they judge you as winning because of that. I actually don't know how the judging works in the Battle Dome. I know how the judging works in the Battle Arena, because that's based on a few set conditions, like how much percentage of HP you have left, how many times you used offensive moves as opposed to defensive moves, because the Battle Dome is meant to be all about offense, and one other thing. Actually, not the Battle Dome, the Battle Arena. I really like the Battle Arena. That was probably one of my favorite battle facilities. The battles there were really fast-paced, and for those who don't know how that facility works, each round you have one Pokemon up against another Pokemon, and you only have 3 turns in battle, and if you don't have a knockout by 3 turns, then it goes into judging. It was pretty fun, and again, the battles being so fast-paced made it something that was nice to do just on the go, because you can get through a lot of battles pretty quickly. I like the Battle Dome too for its, again, fast-paced because of the less Pokemon, but also its sort of tournament structure. Also, the Battle Dome was cool because it actually acknowledged how you EV trained your Pokemon, though it wasn't obvious. Every trainer had a profile that basically said something about, it summed up the way they raise Pokemon, like, it's something like, prefers offense over defense, or raises Pokemon in a well-balanced way. That's based on how many effort points you've got across all of your stats. Which is kind of cool, but anyway. Also lets you figure out exactly what your opposing trainers will have EV trained their Pokemon as. So yeah, I think personally my favorite battle facilities were Battle Dome, Battle Arena. Battle Tower could get bogged down by hacks pretty quickly. Weird thing was, I actually liked the Battle Pike sometimes. I know that it was a luck-based facility, but you had a lot of hints as to what you were getting into for each area. And I kind of liked how they incorporated wild Pokemon into it. The Battle Pyramid was also kind of cool, because that was the closest thing you had to, like, in-game exploration in a competitive battling setting, plus, like, having a bag of items. So that was interesting too, but there were a lot of aspects of that could get annoying, especially the certain Because every round of the Battle Pyramid had a different theme to its wild Pokemon, and, yeah, sometimes they did themes like wasting your PP. That was really, really, really terrible whenever that theme came up. Or statusing you, or doing other things like that. I think they even had a Memento and Destiny Bond theme at one point. That was really bad. But yeah, in terms of battle facilities that I disliked, Battle Palace! Ugh. Not being able to control your own Pokemon and your Pokemon making decisions autonomously based on their nature, especially since most natures, the strategies that the natures preferred did not correspond to the stats the natures gave at all, meaning that many specifically bred Pokemon were terrible in the Battle Palace. Yeah, that was one of the last symbols I ever got. I hated the Battle Palace so much. Especially since the AI trainers almost never fell victim to the randomness at all, and you'd often have your Pokemon randomly doing nothing, because it would say, seems incapable of using its power, and the AI would never get that problem. Anyway, for that, I believe we got Brick Break, which is actually a pretty good TM. I don't really need it, though, because Kick Face already has High Jump Kick, but for any other fighting types, Brick Break was pretty much the best fighting move available in this generation that wasn't, like High Jump Kick, which very few Pokemon got, and Super Power, which, like I said, very few Pokemon got because it wasn't a tutor move, and I guess Submission, but that was a recoil move, and Reversal in certain situations. But for the most part, because there was no close combat, Brick Break was the most reliable fighting move. It's almost never used later on. I think I was just going back to the PC here. Or not. Guess I was going to see if Foley and Trudley have any new dialogue here. Yeah, you haven't changed your dialogue for a while. And they're still in here. Okay, so it turns out that nobody at the police station has any new dialogue, so I guess I'm just going to cut this here. I might show a little bit of fail channel footage from my first attempt at doing Pyrite Colosseum right after beating Mirror B. So, you'll see that in a bit. For now, though, am I going straight to the Under Colosseum? Because this place, like I said, is pretty difficult. In fact, this is going to be at least 2 videos. Because each round here took about 20 to 25 minutes. Each individual round. So, and there's 4 of those. So yeah, this is probably going to end up being 2 videos, the next one. But yes, look forward to the Under Colosseum.